And I will finish with this, the normative. What should the world be like? Different ways of trying to get at the normative. David Harvey says there are three essential ones. One is about thinking in very general terms about what it means to be human. Something that some religions do, some abstract philosophers do. A second is about cosmopolitan practices, social struggles, contentious politics. A lot of that has been happening in and across Latin America in terms of global ideas, the World Social Forum, global social movements, and all of that. Yes, another world may be possible, but we still need a much sharper debate about what that possibility might actually be. And that takes us into the third way of thinking, which is the abstract reflection about what global justice, global order might be like. And there, it seems to me, more than in any other area, the voices of the global south and even of the emerging world seem to be almost totally silent. The academic debate on that kind of global justice seems to be entirely dominated by a particular and very narrow range of voices that come out of the United States and come out of Europe. If you like, under the sort of headings of rules on the one hand and Habermas on the other. And the problems of that kind of thinking for this changed world are absolutely fundamental. It's a debate about justice that's framed in terms of what we owe the rest of the world. The rest of the world is simply not there in that discussion of justice. It's a discussion of global justice without the globe. Or for the Habermasians, Habermas is wonderful talking about the conditions of deliberation, how a consensus on normative values might be produced. But he says almost nothing about what would constitute effective political agency for participants in different parts of the world actually to be able to participate in this debate on global justice. Or one final example, Rawls is obsessed with this idea of ignorance. We all have to think about global justice without having knowledge of the world and where we are. Well, so many people, many Southern cosmopolitans, this makes no sense. How can you think about global justice unless you have knowledge of what it is to be marginal, what it is to be subaltern, what it is to be excluded? The notion that abstract justice outside of a real debate in the world about justice can produce normative ideas about how the world ought to be is surely one that needs to be challenged very directly. So what I've tried to do is to say that there is a real debate about what it means to study international relations in a global age. Those people who stress the need to look at international relations from the perspective of the global south have told us many important things. Those people who talk about the sociology of knowledge, publications, departments, they tell us many important things. Those people who frame the discussion in terms of a challenge to Western American transatlantic social science raise many questions. But none of those three things on their own really takes us very far forward. I'm not sure I've taken you very far forward. What I've tried to do is at least to open up what it seems to me are some of the issues, some of the questions that we need to think about if we are to go beyond the bricks and to think about IR theory in a global age. Thanks.
Eu vou fazer um par de questões que vamos fazendo. Em primeiro lugar, eu achei muito estruturado, muito bem colocado. Eu teria duas questões assim fundamentais. A primeira diz em relação ao que você, me parece que subdimensiona as divisões dentro do Ocidente. E quanto essas divisões refletem não apenas as divisões de Ocidente, mas a própria incorporação por setores do pensamento ocidental de algum modo de outro tipo de culturas e sociedades. Tá? Então, por exemplo, o construtivismo, que é muito forte hoje na academia, não dominante em absoluto na formulação de política, mas em termos de quantidade de pessoas trabalhando, e o construtivismo é uma contestação muito importante de várias dos fundamentos da teoria das relações internacionais ocidentais, inclusive em muitos casos com uma radicalização extraordinária. Tá? Ao mesmo tempo, por exemplo, dentro do Ocidente também, a divisão entre um pensamento americano e um pensamento europeu é relevante. Tá? A própria escola inglesa que formou certamente tem uma diferenciação muito importante em relação ao racionalismo americano, seja neorrealista ou neoliberal. Outra questão que me parece fundamental, que você não mencionou, que é um pouco, digamos, o desafio à teoria das relações internacionais desde a relação da sociedade internacional com o planeta. Tá? Ou seja, por exemplo, o que é a teoria das relações internacionais no antropoceno. Tá? Esta é uma questão muito importante, surgida não apenas no Ocidente, surgida no Ocidente, mas com cientistas de vários outros países que colocam, digamos, de algum modo, o painel internacional de mudança climática é bem internacional, não são teóricos de relações internacionais, mas estão fazendo um desafio que é global. Então, a minha pergunta é, provavelmente, o pensamento ocidental domine um pouco menos do que você coloca e seja internamente mais heterogêneo do que você coloca. Tá? A segunda questão é sobre a questão da relação no Brasil, aí pode ser uma defesa pessoal, a relação entre a Comunidade de Relações Internacionais e o Ministério de Relações Exteriores. Eu acho que essa dominância gigantesca na fundação, na origem, por muitas décadas existiu, mas nos últimos 20 anos há uma situação bastante mais heterogênea. Não podemos dizer que ainda, em termos amplos, é dominante, mas existe uma quantidade. Por exemplo, no Instituto de Relações Internacionais da Universidade de Brasília, a metade dos professores não seguimos em absoluto a agenda de Itamaraty, estamos influenciados por o Ministério de Relações Exteriores, e vários de nós somos muito críticos em muita dimensão. Tá? E acho que isso se repite em vários outros centros de relações internacionais. Então, me parece que nesse ponto há uma simplificação. De algum modo, você colocou um pouco a Brasil como se fosse China, digamos, tá certo? Isso é totalmente válido, mas aqui é diferente. Essa é a boa questão.
Let me take those. I mean, they're both in the sense of the same kind. To get through 45 minutes, I simplified a lot. On the first, I mean, yes, but what I wanted to suggest is that for some of the alternative voices, there's still a challenge. For the orthodox mainstream, there's a big challenge. There's a wonderful article, if people are interested, in thinking about why the rest of the world matters, even if you're a very mainstream Western social scientist. Ian Johnston, in the Annual Review of Political Science, 2011, I think, says, look, let's not sort of go into deep knowledge about regions. Let's just say we do what mainstream social science does. You can't do it unless you know, in his case, it's about Asia, because he's the great China expert. You will do it badly. You will code your data sets wrong. You will not understand why your theories don't work unless you understand the region. So that's an example of the mainstream. But what I wanted to suggest is that those obviously other voices still face challenges. It seems to me that there is a tendency in a lot of constructivist writing to underplay the politics of identity, to make big claims about how identities shape references, without really subjecting those those identities to serious historical analysis. Actually, history, I mean, if I was really going to say, I guess, what I think, I actually don't think in many ways the biggest problem is with theory. I think we've got, more than enough theory to make sense of, at least to try to make sense of what we're trying to understand with the emerging world. We actually have an enormous deficit of serious history. In many, many cases, we just don't know enough about what different countries that we're studying have done, even in the more recent period, to really be able to study. And if I was going to talk to governments, what I try to say to them, if you want your story out there to challenge the stories of Europe and the United States, please, please, please open your archives. Let historians write what the world looks like from the perspective of India, Brazil, South Africa, China. Actually, it's very interesting. Brazil is pretty open. China is becoming very open in terms of access to historical material. I examined the thesis on Japanese-Chinese relations going right into the 1960s, where we could read the records of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. Now that's fundamentally important for decentering the world. It allows us to tell stories that actually, instead of being based, as so much contemporary global history is, on what does it say in the Lyndon Johnson Library, or what does it say in the Public Record Office, we can actually tell stories that reflect a much more global perspective. Two of the most important things that are happening in terms of understanding this world. One is the revival, the expansion of global history as a subject, wanting to see historical phenomena not just in terms of nationalist lenses and nationalist boxes. The other, particularly in the post-Second World War period, is in a sense similar. It's the move of Cold War historians to tell a global history of the Cold War that uses archives as much in Brasilia or Rio and Brasilia as it does in London, Washington, wherever it might be. So I actually do have a problem with a lot of what constructivism does, either because there's not enough on the politics of contestation, or, and that's a similar point, the point I make about ASEAN,